The name tag that didn't need to be on. Welcome, everyone. We are happy to have you all here with us once more. This is session number 11 of Gleanings. We are studying the work, the works of Baha'u'llah in Gleanings from the Writings of Baha'u'llah. And all of you who have been with us for the previous sessions are well acquainted with Mr. Peter Terry. But for those of us who are joining today, we want to give a brief introduction so they can understand what we're talking about and the material and further who Mr. Peter Terry is. So Mr. Peter Terry, he is a frequent speaker here online on Baha'i subjects. He has spoken and written extensively on various subjects. We invite you to see one of the sessions on the Persian Bayan that Peter Terry has hosted. We welcome you to watch the beautiful sessions on the Kitab-i-Iqan, the Book of Certitude that Baha'u'llah has written. There's so many academic contributions that Peter Terry has made. We are so happy that again he is providing these contributions in the form of these sessions on gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'llah. With that in mind, we have many materials that we're going over. We have reading materials on the Gleanings text that's available on oceanlibrary.com/gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'llah /. All of this is written in a URL link. You can find the reading materials, Gleanings, on that website. For the reading assignments, we are posting them in the chat. We're posting them in the video description and, if need be, in the video comments. If you're on YouTube or on a Facebook page, we welcome you. And Jeremiah, he's online running this show here. He will be putting it there as soon as is reasonable. And we thank you if you're just joining in your understanding that the availability will be there. I also welcome you to look at the previous sessions. With that being said, there are several passages that participants have had to read as we do our homework, so to speak, for the next session. So today we have done exactly that for this session. And we thank all of the participants here who have not just done their homework, but who have been really taking part and contributing in their thoughts, their questions, and discussion points. With that in mind, welcome everyone. We thank you, Mr. Peter Terry, and we begin once more.
Thanks, John.
Hello, Peter.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm now going to turn off my video because I've been told that under the circumstances, since we have overcast skies in Northern California, that I'm going to get better reception that way. Okay? And besides, you don't have to look at me with my red shirt and the Golden Gate Bridge behind me for all the time, because I'm going to be sharing the screen and we'll be going through the text together. Now, the text that I'm going to be showing you is the text that's actually in the app, right? This is the Ocean 2.0 course, okay? And I just in case there's anybody who is not able to access that, I'm going to send you a link at the very end that gives you all the information you could possibly need to do everything. All right, to access all the previous videos, to access the text alone so that you can read the text. You can print it out for yourself if you want, or just save it to your computer. Also, links to so that you can register for Ocean 2.0 so that you can be in the class. Basically, I do this every single time because usually there's somebody who joins us who's had trouble signing in. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the text. This is session number 11 out of 17. And there I go. And I share the screen. And there we are. So you see this? So this is when you click on courses, this is the only course that we're offering right now through Ocean 2.0. So this is one will pop up. And then in order to find where we are at any particular time, you have to scroll down. So you scroll down like this. Okay, it's got a little bit about introduction of the course as a whole. Then it has a little bit about me, and then it has the lessons. Okay, and the lessons are numbered, and today we're doing 11. So to access the text, you would go to 11 and you click on that link. All right, and that pops up, you see, and then it gives you an introduction of about which excerpts are actually included in this lesson, which are 100 to 112. And then you do a little bit more scrolling after you've read that, if you wish. Then you scroll down, and what's going to happen, give me a second here. For some reason, my screen is not being nice. You know, sometimes screens are naughty. So that's being naughty at the moment. So I'm going to go down here, and we're going to go. Oh, it seems to be not wanting to do this. Why is it doing that? Interesting, huh? I think maybe there we go. See, now I don't see things that are close to the margin here. There, because they have skinny little runners, and you have to catch it just the right way with your mouse. All right, so here I have it. There are two groups of selections, I should say, for this one. One is going to be 100 to 104, and then the next one is 105 to 111. Okay, so we're going to click on that, and then you do some more scrolling, and you end up here. Now, I have two modes that I can operate in. One is teacher mode, and the other one is student mode. So I'm going to show you the student mode because that's what you're going to see on your computer. And hopefully they're going to sync up properly. If they don't sync up properly, maybe somebody will send me a little email and let me know it's not working. So, and then I'll see about fixing it. So what I'm beginning each one of these sessions with a reminder text. It's a reminder for anybody who's taken the class up to now, to some basic principles that are found in the writings of Baha'u'llah, and then also in one of the letters of the Guardian, for how we should approach studying the text. They're general sort of reminders about how to go about it. All right, so that's going to be here. You see right here, this is going to be the number of the first selection. You click on this, it's going to open, and then it's going to have these instructions. They're suggestions, really, of how you can get the most out of reading. Okay, and then the next thing right here is going to be the first note on the actual passage in question. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. And by the way, this is not meant to take the place of the readings at all. I mean, the idea is that you read these texts from Baha'u'llah, and usually they stimulate your mind in a certain way that you have questions. And I'm trying to answer some of those questions in advance so that you have a chance to look at a commentary that's coming from somebody who's actually studied the text. Hopefully, they're useful, but if there's something lacking, if there's something that I'm missing, I welcome your comments, always. So there are 12 excerpts here in this particular session, session of the class. and I give a brief introduction to each one of them. No reason for me to go through those at this point because you can read this at your leisure. Okay, but this is going to give you a preview of the kind of themes that we're going to encounter in these selections, right? And this might be helpful because if you know what to look for, you see it. And very often happens when you have it's like the woods and the tree. You can't see the tree because of the woods, because there's so many trees in the woods and they obscure your being able to focus on one particular one. But if someone points out a certain tree, says, "Look, that's an oak tree, and all these over here are let's say, fir trees or something." So that's at the top. Then we have now a comment down here, which is reacting to the text itself. So this particular selection is taken from a tablet called the Loy Ali. It's written in Persian and Arabic, both. And it's not found elsewhere except for in Gleanings. This is true of a lot of the passages that are found in Gleanings. They have not been translated elsewhere, and the complete tablet is not translated anywhere. And this is, but there's a proviso, which is the actual original texts in Persian and Arabic, because both languages are employed by Baha'u'llah in these writings. The actual passages are found in a collection that is available online. It can be found at a number of places, including the Baha'i Reference, which is now just called Baha'i.org, and you look for the library there. You can also find it at Ocean of Lights, which is a terrific source of original Baha'i texts in Arabic and Persian. So that's sort of an introduction to this. And he talks about what are the qualifications of those who are called upon to teach the cause. Now, you know that all Baha'is have been told to teach the cause, but we also know, and this has been true from the very beginning, that not all Baha'is do. And they have lots of reasons. Sometimes they're good reasons, sometimes they're not so good reasons. But in any case, the teaching of the faith actually does require that people study, they think about what they're studying, and they need to have certain degree of knowledge of the cause, because otherwise they can't be very effective teachers. As you know, you can tell the difference between an experienced good teacher and somebody who's both inexperienced and not particularly good. We've all been students at one point or another, so we're familiar with that. So one of the qualifications of teaching, of all teachers, is suffer not the hem of my sacred vesture to be smirched and mired with the things of this world, and follow not the promptings of your evil and corrupt desires. This is a very, very important point. First qualification is our behavior, how we embody the Baha'i teachings in our basic behavior with our fellow human beings. The second one is to find the way to receive divine confirmations. If they arise to teach my cause, they must let the breath of him who is the unconstrained stir them and spread it abroad on the earth with high resolve. So the high resolve is very important, is to be very committed and to not allow any obstacle to interfere with delivering this message. But at the same time, we can't just be enthusiastic. We can't just be steadfast. We must turn to the Holy Spirit and allow it to work through us. Baha'u'llah says in a number of references in his writings that we should never credit ourselves with the success of our teaching effort. He says, those people who are attracted to the faith are attracted through our words. They are attracted by the spirit that is being manifested in our words. So it's not our doing. This is the doing of the angels, if you will, who are operating through us. So now I'll take you to the next selection. By the way, I may move rather rapidly through this because there are a lot of selections in this particular um, lesson, number 11. In this one, uh, it talks about, this is still from that original, that tablet that I mentioned. So he's still talking about the same subject. And this is a very interesting thing. He says Baha'is must be very, very careful to distinguish themselves from what their neighbors and their other people in their society are doing. And in particular, it is extremely important that they not take on a mode of solicitation, as if we were trying to get people to become Baha'is through some nefarious process that has nothing to do with spirituality. And we know that this sort of process is called proselytization. It's actually forbidden by Baha'u'llah and by the Guardian using that particular word. So it's very important that we understand that we're not to bribe people, we're not to solicit people to become Baha'is. So the teaching of the faith is not the typical used car salesman technique that sometimes people have employed. Because that alienates more people than it attracts. Then in this one, it talks about not only do we have to sanctify ourselves from all attachment to the things of the earth, but we have to do so in such way that, as he puts it, the sweet smell of the raiment of the all-glorious may be smelled from all them that love him. It's very interesting. It's really, so it's both a negative commandment, do not be attached to these things of the earth, and it's also a positive commandment to be full of in this case, he describes it as an odor, as a smell that makes us recognizable as attractive and as spiritual. And now he's going to talk about a theme that we're going to see in other chapters as well, where Baha'u'llah makes it very important, it stresses that it's extremely important for those who are possessed of riches that they must have utmost regard for the poor. And he says, for great is the honor destined by God for those poor who are steadfast in patience. And great is the blessedness awaiting the poor that endure patiently and conceal their sufferings. And well is it with the rich who bestow their riches on the needy and prefer them before themselves. This emphasis on voluntary giving to others is found throughout the writings, and it distinguishes the faith from many, many other religions, or not necessarily the teachings of the manifestations, but how those religions have been developed over time. They become banking institutions where people are actually required to give a certain amount if they want to have, any standing in the community. So I'm going to go to the next one, and here he's praising the poor who exert themselves and strive to earn the means of livelihood. And working is a universal good thing in the Baha'i Faith. As most of you are familiar with this principle, work is accounted as worship when it's carried out in the spirit of service. And since one of the most important things we can possibly do is worship, then this is a very important principle, because we work all day, 8-10 hours a day, and if we're doing it in the right spirit, we're worshiping the whole time. And as if you're familiar with the talks of Abdu'l-Baha in North America, you know that Abdu'l-Baha considered one of the principles of the faith that he felt were important for people to know at that time in 1912, was the equalization of the economic means of the population. But this is impossible to do unless the poor have jobs. You have to give jobs to everybody. There has to be universal employment. And universal employment actually takes care of a lot of problems that happen in societies, because if we are left without work to do, we're going to get busy doing something else. That's the way human beings are. And a lot of the things that we get busy with are not to our benefit. Here he's talking about equity, and this is from the point of view of how the individual applies this principle. And my comment here is that equity is the opposite of sowing the seeds of dissension amongst men. Interesting definition of equity. It's really quite different from what we tend to hear in the press, and maybe even our own personal ideas of equity. But that is a principle that he defines in this text. So it's good for us to actually see how he's representing equity. Here he's talking about this in this selection here, the importance of holding to the most great name, that's the name of Baha'u'llah, and to his revelation. And as he has stated, the unity of mankind will be brought about by following the Baha'i teachings. It's not going to be brought about any other way. This is quite a startling affirmation to encounter, because we live at a time when people believe in pluralism and relativism and, everything has equal value. But Baha'u'llah is very insistent. No, there's a solution from God to bring about the unity of mankind. And that solution is to follow the teachings. And in fact, he uses this very emphatic language of there is no place to flee to, no refuge that anyone can seek except him. So this is one of the reasons why we read this fantastic collection of the Baha'i writings, is because it's telling us many of the profound, deep teachings of the faith that are not necessarily covered in the fireside or in the leaflet or in the introduction. There's just not enough time. And also, so often those presentations are geared towards someone encountering the faith for the first time. And of course, with some people, you can go right into the deep things. With a lot of people, you can't. You have to go more slowly. And you have to start with things that they're familiar with. So here he's going more about equity and explaining more about this principle. I think because equity has become such an important concept in the United States, in the whole Western world, and something that people talk a lot about, these passages are very important for us to study, because this is Baha'u'llah's perspective on equity. And one of the things I wanted to point out is that he says that he is fully aware of what the breasts of men conceal, the things they have privily committed. Privily means privately, concealed. So, in other words, he knows what we're up to. And this is quite an extraordinary statement too, because we're not used to any human being saying to us that I can read your mind. I know what you're doing. I know what, all the things that you're trying to hide. I know them all. But this is Baha'u'llah saying it. And if we come to him and relate to him as the one who has the power to see deeply into our own soul, and he loves us and he forgives us and he empowers us, then it's inevitable that our relationship with Baha'u'llah is going to become ever stronger. And in contrast to this mode of equity that he's talking about here, he says, we've forbidden men to walk after the imaginations of their hearts, that they may be enabled to recognize him who is the sovereign source and object of all knowledge, and may acknowledge whatsoever he may be pleased to reveal. And he describes humanity as the victims of what their own hearts have devised. So, for example, there's a statement that whatever is good is coming to you from God, and whatever is not good is coming from inside of you. And that also is greatly conducive to humility, to the development of the capacity to be humble. And being humble is enormously effective as a teaching method as well. When somebody comes in contact with somebody who acts like they know it all, they're intimidated, they're repelled, they're not attracted. It's when someone is humble and yet wise that touches the heart. And Baha'u'llah wants us to understand that. The next passage here. He's giving a encouragement to all of us, no matter how inadequate or weak we may imagine ourselves to be. This is also something very important in the passages, not only in this selection, but we'll see them elsewhere, where Baha'u'llah gives a great deal of encouragement to Baha'is. He doesn't just leave us on our own. Say, good luck with that, okay? I want you to do X, Y, Z. Do it now. Do it all the time, and see you later. I'll see you in heaven if you happen to pass the bar exam. No, he's not like that. He's constantly encouraging us and loving us. And whoso hath known him shall soar in the immensity of his love and shall be detached from the world and all that is therein. We're detached from the world because we love God, not because the world's bad. The world is not bad. There are many very good things, but the best thing is the knowledge of the manifestation, because that is going to be working for us and helping us for it throughout eternity. And here's another reminder: amity and rectitude of conduct, rather than dissension and mischief, are the marks of true faith. That's, to me, a refrigerator item. That needs to go on my refrigerator so that I can remember it every time I go to get something out. Because not only does he tell us what's good, he says what isn't good. He reminds us dissension and mischief. And certainly all of us recognize when we read these words, we know that they're speaking the truth because we are surrounded and in, I would say, immersed against our will, but nevertheless in a great deal of dissension and mischief. In fact, it seems to be the prevailing practice of humanity at this point. And as we'll see later on, this is exactly why Baha'u'llah says that certain measures have to be taken for humanity to be truly ready to embrace his faith. And then a lot of these passages, when he's talking about equity, for example, when he's talking about amity and rectitude of conduct and rather than dissension and mischief, he's also talking about teaching, because this is what the major theme of these selections is. And so here now he says, proclaim unto man what he who speaketh the truth and is the bearer of the trust of God hath bidden thee observe. Now, why is that remarkable statement? I think the reason why it's remarkable is it's telling us that we can't proclaim anything to somebody else that we aren't already observing ourselves. He says the first thing is to do it. Then you can go and teach it to somebody else. But if you're not already doing it, why should they? It's like any child. If you have children, you know, if you tell a child to do something and you don't do that thing, they won't do it, because they look at your actions and they want your actions to be harmonious with your words. And they're right. Children are usually right on when it comes to those sort of things. All right, I think that I don't need to go through this again. Now it's going to take me, I see, let me slide this. Yes, there we go. Okay. All right. This is going to talk about what is the purpose of the revelation of every scripture, every single one. Now he's not talking about just his writings. He's talking about the writings of every manifestation of God. The purpose underlying the revelation of every heavenly book, nay, of every divinely revealed verse, is to endue all men with righteousness and understanding, so that peace and tranquility may be firmly established amongst them. Every single word of these is so important for us to read. It's so important for us to understand. This is found in every divinely revealed book. It's found in every verse of every divinely revealed book. And it's the purpose of this revelation is to touch and transform the lives of every person. So often people think that if we could just get everybody to be Baha'is, then the world would be great. But maybe what we're missing is that these teachings actually are for everybody. They're not just for Baha'is. So we need to share the teachings with mankind and let them come to Baha'u'llah, the source of the teachings, when they're ready, rather than insist, no, you have to recognize Baha'u'llah first. Who says? Who says? In fact, Baha'u'llah never said that. What he did say in the very opening of the Kitab-i Aqdas is that if you do recognize Baha'u'llah, you must follow all of his teachings. Those two things are absolutely required of us if we recognize it. But there may be billions of human beings who don't recognize him, and yet they can benefit from the teachings of Baha'u'llah. And that is our teaching effort really should be centered on communicating the teachings to people. Now, This passage here is from a tablet that was revealed in Persian for a man named Ustad Shiri Muhammad. And it was, we don't know anything about the circumstances of the revelation. You know, sometimes we're impatient or disappointed or annoyed that we don't know very much about certain things. We don't know about when was this written, when was that written, who was it written to, and we wonder why. Let us remember, friends, that the Baha'is and before them the Babis were under constant attack from Muslims, principally from Muslims in Iran, but also in the Ottoman Empire, from Sunni Muslims. And when you're under attack and you're trying to protect your family and you're trying to teach the faith effectively and not be martyred immediately so that you have no chance to actually share the faith with anybody, then you have to exercise wisdom. You have to be careful. You have to be thoughtful about how you go about things. And one of the ways to do that is to minimize the amount of information that is shared with people that's not the writings themselves, because otherwise it would be too easy for those enemies of the cause to identify the recipients of the tablets as targets. And those people very often were very effective teachers. So now they have the tablet and they knew who it was written to and when it was written. And you think they're not going to use that information to try to eliminate that person? No. So, I mean, that's something we should keep in mind if we want to know the origins. And another thing is that these are not written only for specific individuals. They are personal, but the counsels, the advice, the teachings that are contained in each one of these tablets are found they are for all of us. They're for all of mankind. As he said previously, they're not even just for Baha'is. They're for every soul on earth. And here again, this is talking about teaching. They who follow me must strive under all circumstances to promote the welfare of whosoever will arise for the triumph of my cause, and must at all times prove their devotion and fidelity unto him. Happy is the man that hearkeneth and observeth my counsel. Woe unto him that faileth to fulfill my wish. The next very short selection here is talking about, it says, God hath through his tongue that uttereth the truth testified in all his tablets to these words, I am he that liveth in the Abha realm of glory. This is an important thing for us to get our heads around, because he's talking not about God himself, he's talking about the manifestation of God. The manifestation of God is in the highest realm of the spiritual world, which means he's attainable to us. We can communicate with him because we can travel in these worlds. God himself is not. God is not accessible even to the manifestation. God is the unknowable essence. So here, this is a very beautiful selection because it's talking about the station of those who commit themselves to teaching the faith and who living by the teachings. You see, he says, were we to reveal thy station, he's talking about this guy named Javad, the hearts of men would be sorely agitated. Their footsteps would slip. The embodiments of vainglory would be dumbfounded, would fall down upon the ground, and would thrust the fingers of heedlessness into their ears for fear of hearing. Now, don't tell me Baha'u'llah doesn't use dramatic language. I mean, imagine the effect on people if somebody who's a trained actor was to go and speak those words to a group. I'd say that you'd light a fire, you know, and and that's the whole point. We need to light a fire, the fire of the divine spirit in our hearts. Here he's talking about don't be worried about uh, those who have busied themselves with the things of the world. And he says, and this is one of the passages that you'll find, and there are many of these passages in the writings of Baha'u'llah, where he says that at some point, there's going to be a day of reckoning. And the many people who are ignoring or contradicting the teachings revealed by the manifestation are going to face consequences. And humanity as a whole will face consequences. And in fact, in some comments to one of the early believers named Varqa, Baha'u'llah stated that the mass enrollment of humanity in the cause will not happen until humanity will have exhausted its every means to deny the revelation and to not follow it. Now, doesn't that sound familiar to all of us from our personal experience? I don't. I can tell you my personal experiences having tried to teach my family. I was a failure at doing that, and many other people, and not through a lack of attempts to do so, but because they didn't want it, they rejected it. And that's what we're facing with humanity. Here is a passage which is I asked this question here because the question is answered in the text. Who is in charge? Man or God? Now, we live in a culture that is absolutely convinced that man is in charge. We're in charge. Well, we have free will, right? So we can make any choice we want, and that choice is good for us. And then look at what he says here. Look at what he says, Fry. Have you imagined in your hearts that ye possess the power to outstrip him and his cause? Far from it. To this he himself, the all-powerful, the most exalted, the most great, doth testify. And then he says what will happen to, as long as we're turning away from him and who are going to be preoccupied with what he calls the vanities and ornaments of the earth, what are the consequences? And he puts it this way, he says, these have lost both this world and the world to come. In other words, we're not going to just find great obstacles in this world, but we're going to find them also in the next world. So rejection has consequences. This is one of the more uncomfortable realizations that one comes as we read the writings of Baha'u'llah, is that he's reminding us of things that many of us thought we left behind when we stopped reading the Bible or when we stopped reading the Quran. We thought that that voice, that commanding voice that says this is right and that is wrong, that was going to be gone, and that now God was going to speak to us very gently and say, well, I'd really like it if you would maybe consider perhaps trying something that I've taught you. Baha'u'llah doesn't speak that way, especially in these passages that the Guardian collected. Gleanings is a really powerful wake-up call for anybody who reads it carefully, because it is so insistent that what is required of mankind, of humanity, is transformation. It's not a little change here and there. It's not a like, oh, well, we just tighten that screw or, pull down that shade. No, it is a reboot. It is a new world order. And that real new world order is not just the administrative order, it's a real new world order that permeates everything on the planet. Um, and this passage, it begs the question that I've cited here. Who is responsible for having received the chastisement of God? And what things are contemptible and worthless? I think it's useful for us to ask these questions when we read a text, because we could miss the point, right? We could just read it and it sort of like flows and we go, oh, well, that's nice, but we don't walk away with a real clear understanding. But listen to this. This indeed is a chastisement which ye of your own will have inflicted upon yourselves. Okay, you get what I'm saying here? You get what Baha'u'llah is saying? This is our responsibility. And and prior to that, there's this wonderful sentence where he says, had the world been of any worth in his sight, he surely would have never have allowed his enemies to possess it, even to the extent of a grain of mustard seed. And then he ends with this wonderful, are ye rejoicing in the things which, according to the estimate of God, are contemptible and worthless? Things wherewith he proveth the hearts of the doubtful? This text now, this next one, is number 63 from the Persian Hidden Words. And it's no doubt included because he's been talking about what's going to happen eventually if humanity continues to reject the most recent revelation from God. And here he's talking about it again. Know verily that an unseen calamity is following you, and that grievous retribution awaiteth you. Think not the deeds ye have committed have been blotted from my sight. I think, let's see, I'm using my scroller and my scroller is not going any further. Why? Well, let's try this. Oh, that's why. Okay. Well, how about that? You'd think that this guy would know how to uh, uh, navigate the system, but not necessarily because I don't use it that often. I'm busy creating the content and then sticking it in, but then actually being able to use it afterwards, I probably should give that a try, right? All right, so this is part 2. And this is an affirmation of basically Baha'u'llah's authority. And worship none but God, and with radiant hearts lift up your faces unto your Lord, the Lord of all names. And this is an excerpt from the Kitab-i-Aqdas. These several passages that are going to be cited here, they are numbers 78 through 84. And they beg, of course, this question of, well, who's the King of Kings? Who is this sovereign Lord? What does he mean by the kingdom is God's? It means the ultimate authority is actually that of the manifestation on this earth. We imagine that we have authority, but we don't. Ultimately, we don't. Ultimately, the decisions are made at the highest level, and the highest level is that of the manifestation. And absolutely miraculous and wonderful for us is that there are many passages in the Kitab Aqdas that have similar language to, for example, the Tablet of Carmel. And the Tablet of Carmel, of course, has these very beautiful phrases describing the world in which we live and the spiritual transformation that we're going to be experiencing. But these are also in the Kitab Aqdas. The Kitab Aqdas is obviously not just a book of laws. And he calls it the unsealed wine, which was an expression that was used in the Quran and throughout Islamic writing to talk about a substance that changes your perspective and your entire orientation. And why? Because this is the point that he keeps reiterating is every manifestation of God that has existed in the past has foretold that this day would come, and that in this day, all the peoples of the earth would acknowledge the religion of God and follow the teachings of God, and that this day would last for a very long time. It's often called an eternity. Baha'u'llah says 500,000 years. Wow, that sounds like an eternity to me. You know, I mean, the fact he says 500,000 years, certainly for anybody who's been living in the previous centuries or even millennia, that sounds like forever. It talks about the most great law, and it uses this symbolism that we find in other tablets, which is all symbolism found in the Quran or in the Bible. And it's very important that we recognize these terms were associated with the promised day. And nobody had a clue what the promised day meant, except for the manifestations and their chosen ones. Nobody. So you see all kinds of explanations for what the last hour means. And the moon hath been cleft. All kinds of explanations that you would see written by Jews, by Christians, by Muslims. And Baha'u'llah has some rather pithy comments to make about those attempts to understand what those symbols actually mean. Because he said, all of those symbols refer to me and this time. And if you want to know their true meaning, you have to turn to the source. You can't turn to Joe Blow, who's going to tell you what he thinks, because he doesn't know. You must understand who to turn to, who has the requisite knowledge. Many people, I think many Baha'is are not familiar enough with the Kitabi Aqdas to understand that these majestic statements of the authority of the manifestation, and particularly of Baha'u'llah, are to be found in this book. And that they are very important for us to familiarize ourselves with, because this is the sort of thing that eventually, if we find a way to work it into our teaching, we're going to attract people. If people just talk about, oh, well, we believe in, all the nice social principles, and we should have world government, and we should stop fighting, that all sounds very comfortable and very familiar and very idealistic. But when we tell them, he who is the King of Kings hath appeared, arrayed in his most wondrous glory, and is summoning you unto himself, the help and peril of the self-subsisting. Now that's a punchline. That's a punchline. And we should realize that punchline may actually touch the soul of the person that we're speaking with in a much more powerful way. When they realize this is God speaking through his manifestation to me, not to just you guys, you Baha'i guys, but me too. In this passage, Baha'u'llah makes it very clear to us that he is not revealing his cause for any personal benefit. He has no intention whatsoever to how he puts this, to lay hands on your kingdoms. Our mission is to seize and possess the hearts of men. Upon them, the eyes of Baha are fastened. So this is something that we need to emphasize very strongly when we're talking about the faith amongst ourselves and also with anybody with whom we come into contact who's not familiar with it, is the Baha'is are not trying to force anybody to do anything. What we're trying to do is attract their hearts to the one thing that is truly all satisfying, which is the love of God. And he, forsake your palaces and haste ye to gain admittance unto his kingdom. This indeed will profit you both in this world and in the next. Here, this is the last passage that's from the Kitab-i-Aqdas that's cited here. And it's praising the king who will rise to aid my cause and my kingdom. And most of us may have this idea that monarchy is a thing of the past. We're not going to have kings anymore. And actually, there is a quotation that was translated by The Guardian and cited in a number of contexts where Baha'u'llah is saying that in this day, from two ranks has power been seized: monarchs and clergy. I don't think he uses those particular words, but that's what he's talking about. And so if we just read that, we might think that kings will never exist again. We're done with kings. But Shoghi Effendi wrote a book called The Promised Day Is Come. And one of the major themes of The Promised Day Is Come is that kings will exist in the future, and that kings will champion the cause, and they will translate the teachings into actual practice. And Baha'u'llah says this beautiful thing about that sort of a king. Such a king is the very eye of mankind, the luminous ornament on the brow of creation, the fountainhead of blessings unto the whole world. And then he says to us, offer up, O people of Baha, your substance, nay, your very lives for his assistance. Then here we have a quote, and this is from a tablet in Persian to Mirza Abu Fazl. And it's talking about, this is a famous selection that we see in many pamphlets, in many introductions. For some reason, this one really, everybody likes this, you know? And he's saying, the all-knowing physician hath his finger on the pulse of mankind. He perceiveth the disease and prescribeth in his unerring wisdom the remedy. And then there's this famous quote that is so often cited by Baha'is: be anxiously concerned with the needs of the age ye live in, and center your deliberations on its exigencies and requirements. But the punchline in this passage, when you read it in the original, which is in the Tabernacle of Unity, that it's found in that particular compilation of all Persian writings of Baha'u'llah, written for Zoroastrians. How about that? The original, the oldest religion in Iran was the religion of Zoroaster. And there were Zoroastrians who were very interested in the faith, and actually a number became Baha'is. And here he's talking about what he describes what are the needs of the age you live in. And the needs of the age we live in are the exact things that Baha'u'llah supplies the teachings to resolve. Because just like he said right here, he has prescribed in his unerring wisdom the remedy. The remedy is to be found in the writings. Again, great encouragement for us to read the writings so that we know what the remedy is. So that when people ask us, okay, so what's the solution to the problem in the world? We're not sitting there like, oops, I don't know how to answer that question. It's not all that hard. And the Guardian insisted that Baha'is who were going to be involved in teaching, once this compilation of Baha'i texts was published, he said, you must study this. You must master its contents, because this is going to prepare you to answer the questions properly. I'll move on to the next selection here. This is a very brief selection, and it's from a huge tablet, the whole of which is translated in the Summons of the Lord of Hosts. Wonderful compilation of all of the tablets to the kings and rulers, including representative governments. And this particular selection is from a tablet addressed to Napoleon III, who was then the Emperor of France. I give these exact numbers of the paragraphs. And he says something very powerful here that I wanted to cite. He says, he who is your Lord, the all-merciful, cherisheth in his heart the desire of beholding the entire human race as one soul and one body. Now, you've probably heard that quote before. We like to quote it because it's talking about unity. But do we really understand what that means and what it doesn't mean, which is just as important? Does it mean that the kind of unity that has been imposed upon human beings by people like Adolf Hitler, like Mao, like Stalin, does it mean that that unity is good? No. It means that there is another kind of unity that brings us together as if we were one soul and one body, which is voluntary, which is peaceful, which is based on love and mutual respect and mutual fellowship. And here we get that answer when we look more deeply at the teachings of Baha'u'llah about what brings about unity. And it's always something that is voluntary and loving and involves dialogue and communication between people who are very diverse. One of my favorite passages about this very subject is from Epistle to the Son of the Wolf. It's something that Baha'u'llah wrote at the very end of his life, probably around, probably within the last year of his life, in which he says the highest station for any human being is to understand and practice the teaching that he describes as You are all the flowers of one garden. You know that teaching? Abdu'l-Baha loved to cite it. And I don't know what we thought it was and how important it was, but Baha'u'llah makes it so clear in the epistle that this is to understand this and put it into practice is the most important thing that we can do as human beings. This is talking about the great time in which we live, this epic, the not only the dispensation of Baha'u'llah, but the cycle, the Baha'i cycle. And this passage was revealed in Persian for Kalamuddin in Iraqi, and it was it also is not found anyplace else. And again, this is talking about the special time in which we live, and the fact that the cause of God will triumph at the end. Then we have a continuation of that same tablet, which has this important statement: all men have been created to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. And Baha'u'llah very often defines exactly what he means by the words he uses. And this is a case in point, because he says right here, the Almighty beareth me witness, to act like the beasts of the field is unworthy of man. Those virtues that befit his dignity are forbearance, mercy, compassion, and loving kindness towards all the peoples and kindreds of the earth. So that's what an ever-advancing civilization is, not one in which we have all the modern advantages that we do enjoy in this time. Because if that's what was really important for humanity to be doing, if that is what God regards as an ever-advancing civilization, then we'd already been there. We've already been there, and we're going even higher and higher. And then apparently we don't need the revelation of God anymore, because we're just so terrific at, creating this ever-advancing civilization, And now we can even have AI do everything for us. We don't have to do anything at all, But Baha'u'llah gives us this real challenge, which is to say, it's not what you think it is. It's not so that we can spread any civilization that has existed in the past as we understand it. This is not a perpetuation of Western civilization or of Persian civilization, for that matter. This is to translate into action forbearance, mercy, compassion, and loving kindness towards all the peoples and kindreds of the earth. And that changes everything if we actually do it, because we've never done it before. Humanity has always been very good at loving a small group of people and hating everybody else. And we don't have that option anymore. Exercising that option will only lead to very unpleasant results. And it's really beautiful to look at this sentence here. He says, let others partake of its waters in my name, that the leaders of men in every land may fully recognize the purpose for which the eternal truth had been revealed and the reason for which they themselves have been created. Very powerful words, right? Very powerful words addressed to all leaders. And then this next passage, which is a long one, this is from the Law-i Maqsood of Baha'u'llah, and the whole thing is translated in tablets revealed after the Kitab-i Aqdas, number 11. And also there's a new compilation called Fountain of Wisdom, It's also number 11. By the way, the texts in those two compilations are the same. It's just for some reason they decided to call it Fountain of Wisdom. Maybe because tablets revealed after the Kitabi Akdas didn't sound very appealing. All right. I want to get to talking with you and asking for your questions and your comments. And so I'm gonna. There are only two more selections here. I'm just going to go very quickly through them. Okay. This one is also from the Loy Maksud, and that is a very important document for us to read. And like I said, we can read the whole thing. And then this next one, this is from the Loy Ittihad, the Tablet of Unity, revealed in Persian for Sayyid Asadullah. And these are talking about the disturbances that are happening all over the world right now. And they aren't just happening in our time. Important for us to recognize this has been going on for a long time. It's been going on particularly more and more intensively since the declaration of Baha'u'llah. So we've had over 100, it'll soon be 200 years of awful things happening to humanity. And so from a historical perspective, this is not a problem just for our time. This is a problem for our age, our dispensation. And it's a problem that we have a solution to. And that is the great charge for Baha'is, is to share that solution with people who otherwise won't know about it. And finally, the concluding passage that's in this collection is also from the Loy Maksud. And continuing his explanation of how to apply the teachings. So I'm going to stop with this now and invite whoever would like to raise their hand and say something, either in the form of a question or a statement. And I know it's not quite as comfortable as if we were sitting around a kitchen table and able to look at each other face to face, eye to eye, and share what we wanted to bring up with each other in that way. But there are other advantages, because we are sitting, in a sense, around one table where anybody on the planet Earth who has internet can participate. And that is an absolute miracle that we can do this. It was never possible prior to, a relatively short time ago. So Mitchell, would you like to speak first?
Yes.
You can unmute.
I did.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, just because there are several things. So I guess I'm just gonna start with a simpler one. I mean, for a majority of them, we can exchange through email, but what one thing is, uh in the beginnings of my learning, because I'm still learning, um but in the beginnings of my learning about the Baha'i Faith, I w- I would always I would always have this question: does the greatest name mean Baha'u'llah or God. And in previous lessons, you already covered it. But my one of my first teachers said, "Does it really matter?" And in my uh, in my thought process at the time, I was like, "Yes." I'm still like yes, but now I'm like also like no, because again, as we discussed, God and the manifestation are two distinct beings, but also the same in their respect. So, 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 like our explanation, our explanation, or your explanation during this course in a
Yes.
past lecture and this lecture, like made it click. So, uh, thank you. Um, because now I understand both perspectives. Yes, it doesn't matter, but yes, it does mean both Baha'u'llah and God. Because yeah, I'm not. I don't want to repeat myself too much. Um,
So, my brother, there is no way that we know anything about God except for the manifestations. That's just the reality. Everything else is guesswork. Even the signs and attributes of God that are reflected in all created things, which he talks about. How would we know about those? How could we differentiate between which things are actually signs and which are figments of our imagination if it weren't for the manifestations? Because the manifestations have objective knowledge. They know what they're talking about, and we don't. We're just guessing. you know and this is such an important you know distinction to make. And the greatest name is very important for us to understand, because the greatest name means that the revelation in this day, and not just the next 1,000 years but the next 500,000 years, that revelation is represents the highest and most complete revelation that has ever occurred. Okay. So this is the mother lode. Okay. This is where we encounter the the text whereby we can understand everything that's been said before, regardless of who it was addressed to, regardless of what century it appeared to, in what language it appeared to. These are questions that people of religion have been fighting over for centuries, maybe thousands of years, you know? And Baha'u'llah resolves all of them because it's the right time and because he is representing the most great name, because Baha or Abha is the greatest name of God. There's no doubt about it. He makes that so clear in his tablets. And it would have to be, in order to represent the fulfillment of human development uh, in all the past, which is what is signaled in this age. That's what we're up to. We live in such a special time. The more you contemplate it, the more you realize that you are so incredibly blessed to live now and not to have lived 200 years ago. Because just 200 years ago, we were waiting for this to happen, and it hadn't happened yet. And we were struggling to understand things that Baha'u'llah explains in a turn of phrase. And not only does he explain, but he explains in so many different ways so that so many different people can understand the same truth. Because we are very different from each other. And one person will get it from one place and another will get it from another place. And Baha'u'llah talks about this. He says the writings are in this great diversity because we need them, not because he needs them. He doesn't need to write all these different kinds of ways of explaining things. We need it. And the writings are for us. They are designed to do a job, and that job is to lead humanity to a place of happiness and unity that we haven't experienced yet, and that has been promised forever. Riaz, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy again that you bring to the foreground the Baha'i dispensation and the Baha'i cycle. We're more familiar with the Baha'i dispensation, but many of us keep avoiding mentioning the Baha'i cycle because it's so far-reaching. That's the 500 with a number mentioned as 500,000 years. We keep avoiding that. We are more comfortable with the 1,000 years of the Baha'i dispensation. I'm so glad that you bring these to the foreground to give us a perspective of who we are, where we are, and so on, especially with science. Science is moving ahead by leaps and bounds. So the accomplishments that are to happen in the next 1,000 years or 500,000, these are now within our grasp, our imagination. The possibilities have been opened now. So I'm very happy. But there's one minor detail that Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the cause of God, mentions about the Baha'i cycle, the duration of the Baha'i cycle. If I'm not mistaken, he's a little more precise. He says no less than 500,000 years. So this pushes.
That's absolutely true, Riaz. That's absolutely true. He says at least or no less than. Yes, he uses those expressions, which is very interesting because this is very much like talking about the Baha'i dispensation, because the Baha'i dispensation is at least 1,000 years, but we don't know how long it will last.
Exactly.
At least.
Exactly. So the reason this granularity is attractive to me is that it opens the horizons even more. So it opens up the extent of the Baha'i dispensation when it says no less than 1,000, or at least expiration of 1,000 years. So this opens up a future, a horizon. The horizon becomes eligible to be long further in the future, more than 1,000. The same thing with the Baha'i cycle. By saying no less than, that opens up the horizon and pushes that horizon even further, or the possibility. And it also adds flexibility, both flexibility and a further horizon. So it gives us a better perspective that we are not locked in to 1,000 years and 500,000 years. We are traveling into a future that's far, far, far reaching. And this is good for science, that we are not restricting science, the accomplishments of science. It's opening up the horizons of science itself, because the universe has now opened up, and
Exactly.
so it liberates science itself and the accomplishments of mankind, the human being, the Baha'i cycle being the cycle of fulfillment. We don't know what are the potentialities hidden within the human being, the gems, the image of God, and all that. So these statements that you're bringing are excellent. It opens up a horizon uh, for us and for humanity. Thank you so much.
Yes, and if I may make two very brief comments. One of them is that in the Pilgrim Notes of the Guardian, he was asked, so what happens after the unity of mankind is established? And he says, the unity of galaxies, the unity of, it's going to be cosmic unity. And it's very interesting to many of us that there is this great desire to settle people on other planets, right? And to study the formation and the materials found on these different planets. But that's only one solar system. So we can't even imagine how far this is going to go, because our ancestors couldn't have imagined where you and I are today. We know this absolutely, they had no concept. The fact that we're talking through this medium and we may be thousands of miles from each other. It just was inconceivable, not so long ago, And so I think that's a important thing for us to keep in mind. And another thing is that we have lived since World War II in fear of the obliteration of the planet. Okay? And Baha'u'llah sets aside that. Baha'u'llah has absolute confidence that we're here to stay, that we're going to be here at least another 500,000 years. This is such an important teaching for humanity to grasp, because instead of all this fear that, we're going to make some mistake and we're all going to be disappearing. No, it's not going to happen. Somehow we're going to come to a resolution of these conflicts, and we're going to achieve this extraordinary expansion of consciousness and of our life. And we don't know how. We simply don't know how. But it's going to happen. And this, I think it's something that we should be sharing with other people, because so many people are in despair. So many people feel that, at any time we could all be destroyed. There's no hope. There's so many young people who are not having children because they say this world is so crazy. I'm not going to bring children into this world. I want to take that for the last minutes. I want to ask Donald to make his comment, because we're running out of time, and I know somebody's going to close the window if we don't get moving.
First off, I'm very thankful that I'm able to attend this meeting today and for the future ones. But I'm very thankful for a teacher like yourself, and I aspire to be like you, because I do believe that many people, or Baha'is and non-Baha'is, need to learn these things. But the thing that kept coming to mind as you were talking about teaching, and also in some of the other writings where it talks about, basically it's talking about a double-edged sword, which is said in the Bible. It's talking that you should watch what you say, because how it's a double-edged sword. We can hurt people, and the last thing we need to do is hurt people's souls or bodies. You're muted, Peter.
Unmuting. Okay. Yes. In some passages that we're going to encounter later on, Baha'u'llah is and again, this is the genius of the Guardian. The Guardian put the selections together in a way that is is just miraculous in itself, because it not only encourages our thought process of understanding, but it breaks it up so that we don't get stuck on one topic, because all the teachings are connected with each other. And that comes across because we're encountering multiple teachings in each of these selections rather than just one topic at a time. It is a way of doing a compilation that's completely different. So I thank you for your kind words, but the reality is that I'm just trying to do what Baha'u'llah asked me to do. And that's what all of us need to be doing to the very best of our ability. And how blessed we are that we have this Gleanings from the Writings of Baha'u'llah to help us to do that. And it's interesting because until I found the letters from the Guardian telling us, if you're going to teach the faith, you have to study Gleanings, I had no idea that the Guardian had said that. It wasn't something that people talked about. But once I discovered it, I thought, not only do I want to teach a course on Gleanings, I want to teach that course all the time, every year, because the insights that we can gain on so many Baha'i topics from this one book are really without limit. So thank you so much for participating. And our master of ceremonies, Mr. Jeremiah Adams, is going to close out the situation. And I was wondering if, Jeremiah, you could just copy and paste into the chat the what do you call it? The link for accessing.
I've already done that.
Clearwater. Yes.
I've put both the Clearwater
he's already
Baha'is link directly and the Ocean 2.0 link as well for them to be able to register.
Oh, yes, I see it. I see it.
So it's there.
Yep,
And
he
I've
did it
also
at
included those on the
5:16
video.
p.m.
Yep. So
Awesome. Great. Okay, thank you.
well, we appreciate everyone coming out for another week, this session 11, and we look forward to seeing everyone next week. Any last words, Peter?
Have a wonderful week. My notes on selection, the selections number 12 will be, which is completed, and it will be put up hopefully within the next couple of days.
And where can we find the recording?
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
You can find the recordings on our website or Clearwater Baha'is or
okay, got it.
YouTube and Facebook. All right.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.